Welcome to And That's When I Realized, the truth and comedy of midlife with me, Susan Dolci.
And me, Leone Dyer. We are two good friends navigating the twists and turns of that middle part of life, and we are laughing our way through it.
Don't get us wrong, it's not all that funny all the time. There's so much we are unprepared for. Adult children, changing bodies, aging parents. We want you to know that you are not alone in these challenges. So sit back, get a front row seat as we share true life stories with a fresh perspective and just a pinch of irreverence. And That's When I Realized starts now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to And That's When I Realized. I'm Leone Dyer.
And I'm Susan Dolci.
And for those of you who have been following us, know that Susan and I are best friends. And we somewhere, I don't know, around pandemic time, started getting together on Fridays just to get together and talk about our week and our challenges and the joys and the triumphs. And somewhere along the line, we kind of like had this theme of, when I was in my 20s or 30s, I thought I'd have this all figured out. Surprise, we don't have it figured out. So welcome to today's show. It's kind of a fun show. This show actually is not one of those shows where, everyone's going to be taking notes and writing down information. Those shows are coming up just a couple weeks. Yeah. But this show's just fun. This is the type of situation or the talk that Susan and I would actually have. And it is about multi-generational living. So all those families under one household. And so today's show are the pros and cons of that. So grab a cup of coffee, some iced tea, whatever you're drinking, and join us for today's show. So Susan, it's been a busy week. I don't feel like I've talked to you since our last show, but we have.
Yeah,
we have.
I know. It was our last Friday because we still get together on Fridays, even though we have the show. And when you popped on, I was like, oh my God, it feels like I haven't seen you in forever. So yeah, it has been busy.
It's been busy. And so we both, we're in our mid 50s. Do you feel busier now or more there's more on your plate than when you were raising your kids?
No. Oh. I knew you would be like, what? How can, no, I don't. I feel like I've got a really good balance right now. Yeah, but because it was, I was super involved in all the things they were involved in. And so I don't have that anymore. I'm not making dance costumes and I'm not shuffling kids to dance competitions, and life is pretty good right now. But Leone, you are a consummate, you are a yes person.
I'm a yes. I'm learning to say no.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm learning to do is to not say I am learning to say we. So in whatever organization I'm in, unless it's really truly for me, I need to go work out or I need to take a nap, which I never say I have to take a nap, but if it's for any organization that I'm working for, even if it's something for the family, I'm now using the word we. We need to do this, or it's really helping. It also lets other people know.
It's because what makes the difference? Do you think it's just empowering other people or letting them know that you have an expectation? And this has nothing to do with multi-generational families. We're just now on a tangent. So go on.
Right. So this is, if you joined us on Friday, this is what it's like. Even when we have a roster of things we need to talk about.
Yeah.
I just think that it allows other people to step in. So when I'm working on a craft fair, and so when you present it and you have your little folder and you have your checkoff sheet and you're like, I've got this. Okay, I need this. Everyone thinks you have it under control when I do not. But when you say we need this, or we then people, I think, understand that it's not just me, that it's other, yeah, they can join me.
Did somebody teach you that? Did you read that somewhere? Or you just all of a sudden have this realization and realized it was working for you?
I would love to say that I came up with it on my own. I don't think I did. I think somewhere someone told me that or kind of gave me that hint, and I've just been following it. Um, yeah, and if it's someone out there, that I'm sorry if I can't give you the kudos for this, but yeah, it's working. Anyway,
So multi-generational families.
yeah,
Let's head back to the topic.
Let's do this.
So what we talked about this, I think, in our very, very first episode, like get to know us sort of episode when we started this show. And it was that I weirdly, I refer to Leone as the country mouse and I'm the city mouse, because you grew up in Western Maine in a small town. And I grew up in the north side of Chicago, in the city. I remember when I started school at University of Illinois, my freshman year, and they're like, well, where do you live? And I said, in Chicago. And they're like, where in Chicago? And I'm like, the city, like Chicago. And I remember people going, people actually really live there. I was like, okay, I was on the north side. Is that what you wanted to do? But I grew up in the city. Anyway, but we both, even though we have very different landscapes that we grew up in, we both grew up with multi-generational households. Yours was a little tighter than mine.
Yeah.
Jamie, our producer, has got some images that I wanted to share because I wanted to give an idea of what my situation was like. So Chicago, in the city, you have like pretty much long, narrow lots. And that would be like one city, like considered one city, like house lot. Mm-hmm. My grandparents, when they bought this, I don't know when they bought it. My dad had to be around 12 or 13, maybe. It's a double wide lot in the city, which was like unheard of. Now it backed up, the extra lot backed up to an alley, which backed up to a gas station, but it was a double wide lot. And so there was a big house in the front that my grandparents lived in that was like a 3 flat house. And so meaning like, if you know, like a 3 flat building, that's a little different where it's, usually brick or whatever. This was a house, and there was an upstairs apartment that was teeny tiny, 1 bedroom, 1 little elfin bathroom that you had to kind of bend over in because of the way the roof was pitched, and a kitchen and a porch. But my grandparents lived on the center floor. My mom and dad lived on the top floor when my brothers were little, and my aunt and my cousins lived in the basement apartment. And then after I was born, because I still don't know where my brothers slept. I think they slept in the kitchen. I have no idea because there was only 1 bedroom. They moved into the house on the back of the property, which when I told Leone I grew up in the back house, she was like, excuse me, because
well, that's what we call the outhouse, like those little houses it was the back house. We're going to the back house.
But so for me, it was like, that was also called the coach house, which was also teeny tiny little house, but it was its own separate house. So that there was a little bit more room for a family of 5. But I shared a room with my brothers until I was probably 5. And then they finished off the attic in that small teeny tiny house, so my brothers could have, share a room up there. Again, you could only really stand in the center because everything was so tiny, pitched. But if you're sleeping, what difference does it make, right? But yeah, so I grew up with my grandma and grandpa right there with me all the time, and my cousins, and my mom's family. She had 1 sister that was still alive when I was growing up, and she lived in California. So it was primarily my paternal family. the paternal side of my family. And but it was like, it was magical, you know, we had magic. And you always had something to do in the evening. There, everybody was always outside in the summertime. I don't know, it was just, you never felt, I never felt not safe. I never felt alone. Even if I had, like, if my mom couldn't be there, I knew I could go to my grandma's and I could hang out with my grandma till my mom got home. And so yeah, it was, is some of the happiest memories of my life. So we're gonna go to a break in about 2-ish minutes. So I don't necessarily want to dive into Leone's situation yet because hers was so different. But I do have some statistics that I would like to pop in here really quickly.
I do too.
Okay, what are your statistics? We have time for one statistic, and then we can get to the other when we come back.
No, you do yours. Mine are like, okay, I wanted to like find out what states have the most multi-generational families.
Okay.
You want me to do that?
Yeah.
What do you think it is? What state?
I'm
gonna put music on now.
Ohio.
No, it is Hawaii.
Really? I guess
Yes,
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
At 7.9% of the population, and that's 36,272 households.
Wow.
Right.
Well,
and
I was just going to say, because I mean, most of the multi-generational families I knew outside of mine were Asian. They were Asian.
Number 7 on the list, and this kind of surprised me, was New York. And that was at 4.4%, and that was 321,500 families. But interesting statistic, like North Dakota, Iowa, Montana, South Dakota, and Wisconsin had the least.
Yeah, because there's so much room for them to all spread out that they don't need to live. Have you ever been to South Dakota or Montana?
Oh yeah,
I've been. There's more cows than there are people. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, it does kind of make sense because there are some cultural aspects to multi-generational living. Like it's just, you know, part of the culture. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we're at the top of this break, or at the end of this break. I don't know how you say that. And we are talking about multi-generational families today, the pros and cons of living under one roof. You're listening to And That's When I Realized, and we'll be right back. I love that music. Hey, everybody, welcome back. You're listening to And That's When I Realized. I'm Susan Dolci. I'm here with my co-host, Leone Dyer. We're talking every second and fourth Thursday at 4 Eastern. We get together and we talk about the truth and comedy of midlife for the most part. Today, though, we are talking about something that's just kind of near and dear to our hearts, like, you know, that is so much a part of who we are and why we are, right? And that's about multi-generational families. And so before the break, I was talking about my setup in the city, which was sort of unique. Like it just, to have a double wide lot like that, where you could have 2 houses on it and a full yard and garden and garage, like that was kind of a big deal. So what was your setup, Leone? Because yours was completely different.
Yeah, I lived on 500 acres and a house and a barn and farms and all that. And then scattered around me in our little country neighborhood were all my cousins. And those that weren't cousins were so close to the family that they should have been, or could have been, I guess. So we lived with my grandmother and my parents and my brothers, and all in one house. And we also lived in the family house. So it was the house that my dad lived in and all his siblings. His dad lived in it.
Can you put some context around that when you say the family house? Because I think there's a lot more to that history than just the family house?
Well, the house that I grew up in had been in my family since like early 1800s. So yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, so pretty much, you go down through the generations, and they all were born and probably died there. So, um, so yeah, I didn't know really what it was like until I was later in my maybe grammar school, what it was like just to have my parents, because my grandmother lived with us. And then my grandmother, Susan and I've talked about this. I was trying to figure out what age, but at some point, my grandmother got married, which just
Back then was like, excuse me?
right. I remember driving to the wedding. And so let me think. I was like 12. So my dad was, gosh, I can't even do the math. And okay, any of my relatives are probably yelling right now what the math is. But I could probably do the math if I really think about it. But anyways, my grandmother, so we're driving, and we're starting to we get life. And so we're driving to the wedding, and we're asking him, are they going on a honeymoon? And my dad's like, oh, stop talking about it. And he's like, are they, do old people have sex? I'm like, stop talking. But yeah. But then, unfortunately, several years out, well, no, like 7, 8 years after that, my grandmother developed kind of accelerated dementia and moved back home. So she was there for the last part of her life, but it wasn't unusual because she came all the time, even when she wasn't there. She had her own room, like her room never went away. But the thing that was like, I remember about growing up is there were so many people that were coming in and out of our house. Like I remember eating dinner, all sitting around, my grandmother and us, and people would just come. Like it wasn't like, it's dinner, so we're not going to bother them. They'd just come. I mean, because it was the family home, and they would come in, and sometimes they would just stand there while we ate. If you think about it, it was really awkward, but it wasn't, because that's all we knew. And sometimes they would sit down and join us. And there were times that, yeah, our house never felt empty. Like you said, you never felt like alone or empty. Never. I never felt like I had a space to myself, like even so that's probably why I liked going outside. I could find my own space that I'm sure other people in history of my family history had walked on or been on, but none of my cousins or my aunts or my uncles were claiming that space. Whereas like my bedroom was my aunt's room. And then it became this room. And then actually my parents lived in that room. Then it became my room. And then later it became my niece's room, because the multi-generational family living in the house has continued. My parents live there, my brother and his wife and their daughters. So it's continued. But yeah,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned just a few minutes ago, you said it wasn't until, I was like blah, blah, blah age that I just had my parents. So was that like, did you feel like you wanted more, like you weren't getting enough time to be like with your parents, to bond with your parents? Or was it just, or it just you didn't consider it because it just wasn't part of your environment?
No, I didn't even understand like that there was something different. Like I had friends that it was just them. It was just the mom and the dad and siblings. For me, all I knew was having my grandmother there, having my uncles, aunts, cousins coming in and out of our house all the time. That's all I knew. And even when my grandmother moved away, we still had people coming back. all the time. I mean, yeah, daily, not just like for a visit on the weekend.
Mhm. Well,
So go ahead.
go ahead.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say, so I didn't know it became, I think we were able to be a little more freer in our family when my grandmother wasn't there, because we didn't have to maybe be as quiet,
Mm.
or if we got into, these like debates, we didn't have to like simmer it down, or my mother wasn't trying to like push us through to the next room. We were able to be a little more free.
Mhm.
Um, so that I do, I mean, I recognize that after my grandmother moved away.
So one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this is because multi-generational living is on the rise
It is.
because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
People have, maybe not necessarily by choice, have decided to move in with their parents because of financial reasons. I mean, this is still a topic for midlife, because we're still sandwiched, right? Whether it's, it's younger people with families with younger children moving in with their parents, or our parents need to move back in with us, as in our generation where we're caregivers for our parents. But I'm curious what the difference is. Like, I feel like a lot of people are making that choice, like I said, for financial reasons and childcare reasons, and not necessarily because it's the best living situation for them. So I think I think it's, I think it could be stressful. You want, like, if I feel for these moms when during the pandemic, that were carrying the burden of schooling and childcare and still trying to do their jobs. And, God help them if grandma was around and grandma could manage that, so they could just go into another room and do their work. Um, and I, I think, like, if I had to do it, if I had to do that right now, or when my kids were little, I think I would have lost my mind, because because I did have to have my mom move in with us for about a month. She shattered her ankle, and there was one bathroom on the second floor, so she couldn't get to that. So I mean, she had to be in some sort of living arrangement where she could get around and shower and all of that. So she stayed with us for a month, and it was not fun. It was not fun.
Was
I
it
loved
not
you.
fun because she was injured and she needed that extra care, or is it just the different age groups and personalities
It was,
overlaying one another?
yeah, it was definitely that. It was age. It was, like, her not being used to, I mean, I parented very differently than she parented. And that's something we're going to talk about in the next segment a little bit. But and she was not used to being around my girls 24/7, and was not prepared to handle their emotions, and and whatever back talk I was going to get, or there was a lot of eye rolling on her part.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and also, yeah, I think it makes a difference if you grew up like, you come home from the hospital and there's mom and dad and grandma and grandpa already established.
Mhm.
Then if, and it's a life situation has happened and grandma and grandpa have to move in, or you have to move in with them. Like, like you and your kids have to move in for whatever situation. I think it depends how it was established in the first place. And I
Mhm.
think there are pros and cons to both, or I think there are not necessarily pros and cons. I think there are, benefits and disadvantages to having both of that.
Yeah, and my mom's situation, like when she was living in the upstairs apartment, when my brothers were little, I mean, it was a little bit different because everybody had their own space.
Yeah.
And they could congregate in the common areas if they chose to, but they didn't have to. It wasn't like they were always sitting around eating dinner together, and my little brothers weren't they weren't my big brothers when they were little were not necessarily in, my grandma and grandparents' house all the time and in their stuff. And so everybody, I think, had the right amount of privacy. I think it was sort of it was a beautiful setup, but to all be crammed in the same house, whether it's big or small, that would be challenging for me. I can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we want to talk about how parenting through the years has maybe changed because we do not live in multi-generational families anymore, and what a support system that was to young parents. Yeah. You're listening to, and that's when I realized. We'll be right back. Hey, clearing my throat. Welcome back. You're listening to, and that's when I realized. I'm Susan Dolci. I'm here with my bud, Leone Dyer, and we are talking about multi-generational households today. And one of the reasons, this topic was kind of near and dear to Leone's heart. She really wanted to talk about this. And I really wanted to talk about it because I'm actually going to have this person on the Awakened Parent Project in October. I can't remember which date in October, but her name's Pam Leo. She's the author of Connection Parenting. And she is a parent coach. She was like giving conscious parenting classes back in the 90s, which I wish I had known back in the 90s that existed.
Yeah.
But she talks about multi-generational families in regards to parenting. And I want to read a few quotes from her book, Connection Parenting. Mm-hmm. Our grandparents and great-grandparents didn't read books on parenting or take parenting classes. Did they really know about bonding? No. Our great-grandparents didn't know about bonding either. It was not what they knew that made parenting different for them. It was how they lived. In our great-grandparents' day, children's need for human connection was met naturally by a lifestyle that supported a strong parent-child bond. The stressful pace of modern living, the loss of extended family support, and the ever-increasing amount of time adults and children spend with television and computers have further weakened the parent-child connection. And again, that's Pam Leo from her book, Connection Parenting. So what do you think about that, Leone? How do you feel about that because that she's implying, I think, that children had more secure attachments, felt like safer in their environments because there was so much family support?
Well, I think it depends on every household, every parent, every human. I had a great connection with my maternal grandmother, who I did not live with. We lived with my paternal, not my maternal. So my dad's mom is who we lived with. She was not a warm, fuzzy human. So I didn't have that and that connection with her. But my brother, she had a better relationship with my brother and a few of my cousins than she did me. So I didn't have that, but I can see it. I actually see it more with my parents and my nieces. Mm-hmm. And I think my parents I think they have aged. How do you say that? Aged more, I was going to say better, but I don't know if that's the right thing. Aged slowly or they've been more active.
Slowlier. You're making up words. This is good. No, I'm giving you a hard time.
But they're more active because they have my nieces with them. And they have a bond. And I see that. It's more than really a grandparent bond. Like what my kids who don't live with them, even though we live really close, they didn't live with them. That's more of a grandparent bond. My nieces, this is a little more deeper than a grandparent bond, and it's not their parents. So they didn't, I think they disciplined, but they really left it up to my brother and his wife to set the bounds on the discipline. And then they just, but I see that it can work, that a multi-generational family can work because they have those bonds, and that the grandparents can help take care of the younger, the children, while that middle generation is working and doing all the hard stuff.
Well, and I think that's what she was talking about um, in this quote, is that, so let's look at let's go back in time a little bit, when everybody was under one roof, because in rural areas, right? Because there was a farm, things had to be done. People had to take care, not just, I mean, let's go even farther back for survival, right? Everybody had to come together and do together and be together in order for the family to survive. And so there was just a deeper connection for children to feel supported. I guess what I'm leaving out here is in attachment science, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. It is the science of connecting to another human being so that you feel secure within yourself. So there's secure attachment, there's insecure attachment, and then there's three kinds of insecure attachment. There's avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized. So what she's saying is that because you only really need one secure attachment to one caregiver. So let's say it's the grandma, because the mom is out, was doing whatever, or the core parents, the main, who would normally be the main caregivers, right, are out doing whatever work they have to do. But there was always somebody. And I think about one of Juliana's friends growing up. And this is, we were talking about when you said Hawaii has a large population of multi-generational families.
Yeah.
The mom is Filipino and the father is Japanese, and her mother lived with them. And the mom was a nurse. I can't remember what Dave did. Anyway, but their grandma was always there. And my daughter felt just as close to the grandma, maybe even closer to the grandma, than she did her friend's mom, because grandma was always there. If they were going over to play, grandma was the one who was there. Grandma was the one making the snacks. And so I think it really takes a lot of the pressure off, like you said, if it's been there from the start, and if there's already a good relationship between the parent and the child, versus like what you said, all of a sudden grandma moves in, because like my situation where my mom had to live with us for a month, and it was like, yeah. So I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Well, I have a friend who actually, during the pandemic, her college age and two college age children and an adult, he was already out of college, because of the situation of the pandemic, they moved back home. And then his dad, so let me think, so it would be three generations. Dad or grandfather moved in with his son and wife, and then the three grown children. So they went from just being like the two empty nesters to within, I think, 2 months, everyone's home. And they just really had to and they're not doing that now, but they just had to kind of sit down and say, listen, these are the situations that are happening with this many people in this house, and all of the situations that are happening. And they were able to kind of talk it out, because they already understood how things were being triggered and what was coming up. And they were able to understand, I just need to, break. I need to get away, because they understood what it was to not do that. But they made it work. I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could live with my parents. Yeah.
They might be saying the same thing about you. I don't think I could live with that, Leone. That
I
child of
am,
ours,
I am,
she's
I
just
am
a little,
positive. Yes. Yeah, I'm positive. And my kids too are like, I'm not moving back home. No way. I will live in a box. No, but as I think when you grow up with it, it just becomes what it is. Whether it's healthy or not, it is that's all you know.
That's true.
And yeah, and so it I can easily see multi-generational families having the same dysfunction as just, the single mom raising the kids or the single dad raising the kids, without all that extra support. I can also, and so I think it really, like, bottom line, and this is like a theme in all our podcasts, is truly to be just really tap into what it is that you truly need and how the best way to receive that. That doesn't mean being selfish. It just means, like, be true to yourself.
Well, and communication is really, I mean, that's core to that. And yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Um, and I also, I mean, when you were talking about your mom giving you the eye, like doing the eye rolls, like when your kids would say something. Yeah. And that's a tough one. My grandmother would, say things to us, and we grew up with her. So she was giving her, her little comments. It didn't help. Like, it didn't help my parents or my mom. It didn't help my mom. My dad would just walk away. But,
it's hard. I mean, so yeah, I mean, that's what's so funny is I think back to my childhood, and I'm like, and I used the word magical. And for me, it was magical because it always felt like there was a party. That's what it felt like. When I grew up, it felt like there was always a party.
Yeah.
Especially in the summertime. And, but, I was looking at it from the, little kid perspective, and, yeah, and not from my parents' perspective. I know. So we're coming up on one more break, but my mom, now that I think about it, my mom probably really did not like the situation. My mom wanted to move and wanted to get a bigger house and get out of that sort of being under the purview of my grandmother. She loved my grandmother, but my grandmother, kind of ruled everything with an iron fist. And so they got adventurous and they bought a house 5 doors down.
Yeah.
Where my grandparents were living. So they didn't go that far because there was still, this like support system of, knowing everybody's there. It's like, I don't think my dad could have gone any farther, to be honest. I think he would have.
But it gave them that little bit of breath where they weren't like even though you weren't under the same house, you were kind of in the same lot, the same area. So, like like
I could go in my backyard and I could look down and I could see if anybody was in my grandparents' backyard.
Right. Well, I mean, my kids live literally across the field of where I grew up. We could see the house. From our house, we can see like the top of their house. But it's that enough. Like it's enough where you can come to your own house and close the door and be like, oh, okay, and yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of I don't want to say the negative of multi-generational, because there's so many positives. Like my brother and sister never had to worry about a babysitter ever. Yeah. I mean, and they could go away on little vacations and there they are. And my parents have care. Like my nieces drive them to their appointments. And so, it all works, and they all, so I think with any human, any situation, it really depends on the human, how you walk into the situation, and what you know best about yourself to bring forward.
And on that note, we're going to go to our final break. You're listening to And That's When I Realized. I'm Susan Dolci. I'm here with Leone Dyer, and we'll be back in a little bit. We're back. You're listening to And That's When I Realized. Pardon me. We're talking about multi-generational families today. And so I have I have something I want to ask you, Leone, because I thought this always happened in my family. And now I even find myself doing it, which maybe it's just old age. Maybe it's just
Yeah, it's that age thing creeping in.
I don't know. That when you were a kid, did you get like all of your like siblings' names or your cousins' names before they got to your name? So like for me, it was Steve, Gary, Susie. And you know, be like, Steve, Gary, Susie, I come here.
Yeah.
I need you to
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom would do it when she got really flustered. Like, and I find that when raising my kids, I would still do it. Like I tend to, I would tend to say one kid's name over the other. And that child, so I was like, hey, come on, you know, it wasn't them. But because we came from such a large family, I mean, I only had 2 siblings, but because we lived in an area that had 3, yeah, like 2 uncles and an aunt and all their kids that lived near us, I got called all of their names. And the worst part, is getting that bag of clothes, because I was the youngest female, and it would go through all the families, and then all the clothes, and then it would come to me. So there was this one picture in my grandmother's house, and I don't know why she saved the third, 4th grade picture, but that's the one that was all the pictures of her grandchildren. And she had 3 of us were in the exact same outfit.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So yeah, completely. And so that's, yeah. And then when you grow up in the family home in the and you sleep in your aunt's room, who was, someone else's room before that, like her, my grandmother or my great grandmother's room. And then it became like my aunt's room. And then it became my room. And now it's my niece's room. That also, like you start getting that whole like morphed into losing your own identity.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So we're going to jump to, because we want to promote a few shows that are coming up.
Yeah.
So if you follow us, you have to know that Leone is the queen of the sticky note, that she lives and breathes by a good sticky note. And even though you cannot see, because they're all in front of her, her entire computer screen is covered in sticky notes. So when we decided to do this show, we said midlife or life doesn't come with an instruction manual. That's why we're kind of having these discussions, but we figure if it doesn't have an instruction manual, we can at least give you little tidbits of advice, one sticky note at a time. And so today's sticky note is, Leone, what is it today?
Okay, a family is a bunch of people who keep confusing you for someone you were as a kid.
Think about that one for a minute.
You were as a kid.
So basically, your parents are always going to, you're always going to be their kid, and they're going to see you as the kid and not as the adult.
Yeah.
They're going to remember all the stupid stuff you did as a kid, and they're going to like those labels are going to stay with you forever. And if you have to live with them under one roof, I assure you, they will remember you as the child, not as the adult.
Yeah. And not even, I mean, I can get in the car with my parents and I'm all, I am now 16. Yeah. I am not 56. Yeah.
Nothing 100%. Changes. So we've got some really, we're actually going to shift over to an interview style for the next few shows. Mm-hmm. And our next show is, I'm really, really super excited about this. We are talking about pelvic floor health. We are going to be interviewing Heather Dibke and Dr. I cannot remember his first name, but Dr. Crawford. He's runs a clinic in Reno. And he has developed a set of exercises to help with bladder leaks, just general pelvic floor health. And so if you have a question that you would like to ask, because we're going to be, we can consider taking questions, but it's going to be, there's going to be so much information packed into that I would think I'd like to curate questions. If you have one, please feel free to email support@susandolci.com with a question. If you've got something that's been bothering you with that, and if this is a chronic issue. So we would love to be able to answer your questions specifically, instead of, because this is important. We don't talk about this enough.
Yeah.
And we have another show. Leone, you want to pitch
Sure. This is I am very excited about this show. It is, again, we're talking about multi-generational, but this is multi-generational trauma. So what comes, and not only do we get the hair and a few of the funny little quirks of our parents or our grandparents, but we also carry through the trauma that has come forward. And so Candy's last, Candy, say it again. Yes, will be joining us the fourth date of it? The fourth Thursday, which I think is maybe it's the 21st. September.
Yes. And she is a chaplain. She's a grief specialist. She is a hospice chaplain. And she's also a second generation Holocaust survivor. So she is very familiar with inherited trauma, and how it can be really, really subtle, show up in your life in ways that you don't even realize that it's not your trauma. It's how the trauma to, let's say, your grandmother was very subtly passed down with ideas and ideologies and mindsets. And also, we also know now that it's also biological. It's also trauma on a cellular level. So,
yeah.
So we're really looking forward to that one. That was also another request from Leone. She's like, we have to talk about this again, because I had Candy on 3 things I've learned a couple of times, but talking about inherited trauma. But it's really such a rich topic. It's really hard to get to the nitty gritty of that. So we're going to have it. So we're going to have some interviews the next few.
Some heavy ones too. So that's yeah.
So thank you. You've been listening to, and that's when I realized. I'm Susan Dolci.
And I'm Leone Dyer.
And remember, take this away with you about growing old gracefully, that age is just the number of years that the world has been able to enjoy you. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for being here with us today on And That's When I Realized. We are here to shed some light on the misconceptions around midlife by sharing real-life stories and a fresh perspective.
Look, we know it's not easy, but change is constant and inevitable. Let's explore what it means to move through challenges with a dose of humor and embrace each challenge, each new discovery with a higher sense of understanding. We hope you heard something today that made you laugh and recognize the truth and comedy of midlife. See you next time.